It is Friday the 13th, 7 Fridays away from Christmas. Woo! And I think today's going to be a lucky day. Any day is a lucky day when you put that right foot forward. That stated, it may not be too lucky for some residents in the city of New Bedford. Let me rephrase that. I think it will be. I think it will be because we're going to dispense some information today on the program that may change some folks' mind. It may not, but I don't know where you really go here. What am I talking about? We had mentioned it on the program a couple of times before. Today, I have in studio Stephen Sheldon. Who? Stephen Sheldon. He recently bought for $355,000 a parcel of land located at the corner of Hawthorn and Irving Street in the city of New Bedford. For the life of me, I've never seen the number 49 on the building, and if you were to ask this cab driver, this person walking up and down the street, I would say that the property, especially where the front door is really on Irving Street, but that really doesn't matter. The fact of the matter is, it is known as 49 Hawthorn Street. And there are some neighbors in the area, and there are some New Bedford City councilors that don't like what Mr. Sheldon has planned for the property. And I have mentioned it on the program before, and I've talked to Stephen Sheldon about this. You know, people are using the term sober house dealing with this property, and I suppose you can say that name works, but the fact of the matter is, it is an apartment building, or going to be an apartment building housing sober people. And one could ask the question, oh, wow, why do we have to have a sober house around here? Let's turn it around just a little bit. Do you want a bunch of drunks running up and down your neighborhood? So let's get into it. 49 Hawthorn Street. Historic building in a great neighborhood. And it's a piece of property that the current owner looked at and said, you know what? I can do something here which is similar to what I've done in Lowell. And I can lease out rooms here for X amount of dollars. I can cover my mortgage and all of my operating costs dealing with the building. I can give people who are up and on their feet a chance to move forward and to have housing with like-minded people. Now that's Brian speaking, and I'm not sure that our guest would say it quite the same way. And I know that there are others out there who are saying, not in my neighborhood. We have city councilors that are saying the very same thing. So with all of that stated, we've had an editorial in today's Standard Times in regards to this, the Hour View. We have had a couple of newspaper stories this week dealing with the meeting that happened at the appointments and whatever board meeting that the city council had not too long ago. And then of course, a couple of weeks ago when Mr. Sheldon introduced himself to the bed and breakfast owner who was a neighbor to his property. So there has been a lot written about this property, a lot stated about this property on the program. Dan and Jim have run news stories with some of the city councilors who seem to be very adamant about a, quote, house for sober people on Hawthorn Street. So, without further ado, what I'd like to do is bring in the new owner of that property, 49 Hawthorn, Stephen Sheldon. Why don't you get up a little bit closer to our microphone and introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Steve Sheldon, SJS Holdings. We own rental property, and I purchased the house on Hawthorn Street to use it for housing for those who want to live in a sober environment. It's a single-family home. and it will remain a single-family home. The folks would rent it as a group and live a sober lifestyle.
As far as, let's just look at the law right now, just the law. Is there anything wrong, zoning-wise, doing what you want to do with that property?
I don't believe so. There's been multiple cases heard by the United States Supreme Court and on the state level by the SJC around this issue of protections. And they're folks in recovery, in long-term recovery, or in recovery in general, are protected by the Fair Housing Act. And it specifically stops towns from both regulating or discriminating or using redlining practices to stop folks from living in a neighborhood.
And you've done this before. You have a house like this in Lowell, correct?
And Worcester.
Worcester, and so you have more than one house like this. How's it, when did you first start doing it?
I started doing this about 6 months ago.
About 6 months ago, and during that first 6-month period, how has this worked for you as a business owner and for the residents in that particular neighborhood or neighborhoods in Lowell and Worcester?
There is some trepidation always when the house first comes in, but these guys are great neighbors. In fact, they live a lifestyle that is clearly sober for the most part. You do have some recidivism, but very little. They go to meetings, they work, they have to be able to afford the house, and we screen them before they come in. So in the end, they turn out to be great neighbors.
So you screen them. How do you go about screening them? What's in that screening process?
Everything that a typical rental would have. So we screen for employment, landlord references. We do a background screening using the Corey system, criminal. We also check for sexual predator databases on a federal level, and that's also covered under Corey, but we do a separate one. And that is the basics of the background screening.
So the big question would be, you're running a house for sober people, which others have called a sober house. What makes yours any different? I mean, people are going to worry, and I think naturally so, about people relapsing.
Sure. It's my house, it doesn't make any difference. There's a segment of people in long-term recovery that go from year 1 on, and we typically try to get people about a year out. So before that, they're in different types of recovery homes. It may be a rehab, it may be a day program, it may be an inpatient program, and that typically takes someone out to about a year. From that point on is when someone may live in a house like mine, and the goal is to get that person from year 1 to year 5. And at year 5, very typically about 85% of people will stay sober for the rest of their lives.
So you're basically phase 2 of a transition period for these folks.
There's a continuum of care, and yes, we're further down the road from what a rehab would be.
I need to ask this question. You've been doing this for roughly 6 months. How many people have relapsed? Have you had to force out? You do have a stipulation in your lease that requires them to remain sober.
We do.
And so how many people have fallen off the wagon?
2 people have fallen off the wagon. And we make provisions, and there's no absolute certainty, but we make provisions when people come in and they make a plan. What happens if you fall off the wagon? Where do you want to go? We try to have relationships, or have the folks who are running the house have relationships with local rehabs, IOPs, intensive outpatient programs, and the folks will either be readmitted if they're willing to. It's a voluntary thing to be readmitted to a rehab, or add something additional like an IOP, which gives someone 3.5 hours, 5 days a week of additional intensive counseling. And this, in both cases, both people had chosen to voluntarily go back, and then we took them back to the house.
So they did a program and you let them back in. I think people wonder and maybe worry, they relapsed, they left, you're letting them back in. What happens if they relapse again? Any thought about that?
It's possible, and it's, it's tough to say what relapse means, but in this case, and very often, this is what relapse looked like. I got a phone call from the house coordinator who said, I just heard from someone, he admitted to having a drink, he's going to put himself into a rehab. He didn't come back to the house, there wasn't any kind of disruption at the house. Most of these guys are very much into where they live, they're supportive of their other members of the house, and they don't bring their addictions back to the house. I'm not saying it can't happen, but in both cases, it did not happen.
Fair enough. You want 8 people in the house on Hawthorn Street. Will they be all the same sex?
Yes.
So there's no chance of that type of commingling?
There's not. Some houses, not mine, but some houses, very few are co-ed. Most are either male or female.
Now you say most houses. You have 2, you're looking to start a 3rd. Is this program something that you found somebody else doing? Are you reinventing the wheel? What exactly is going on here?
So I have 2 different types of houses. I have one where I actually have a manager who manages a house, and then I'm actually opening a couple others, but I'm using something called a system that was developed by an outfit called the Oxford Houses. And they're self-run houses. There's about 1,000 of them across the United States, and they have been around for 30-odd years.
What made you decide to go this particular route?
In terms of the Oxford House or the housing in general?
Well, I can understand housing in general. It's a great income source. I'm talking about a house for sober people.
I've been involved in the community for many years in terms of the homeless, volunteering mostly with people, and it turns out there are a lot of people who are homeless have addiction problems. So I've been around that community for many years.
Are you a former addict?
I'm not.
So this is something that you did you ever look at this as a great way to make money?
Absolutely, it's a for-profit business. The money is not significantly better than a typical rental. In fact, it's very, very similar. But
my guess is down the road, if it works the way that it is intended to work, it will be better because you will have reliable tenants who will be paying consistently month in and month out. And unless they decide to go off and get married, start a family, whatever, or reunite with family, they're not going to want to leave.
Absolutely.
Let's follow up with that. We're going to open up the phone lines too. 508-996-0500, toll free 877-996-1420, and well, maybe. Email briansbeat@wbsm.com, briansbeat, BRIANSBEAT@wbsm.com. Welcome back to Brian's Beat. Of course, folks are starting to call in already. I just want to read a couple of comments here, quotes out of the newspaper from some of the city councilors, and I have asked councilors if they would like to join in on the program today. I haven't been able to get through to many. Carrie Winterson, Ward 5 councilor, the counselor for this particular ward where Hawthorn Street is, has a busy work schedule. Friday is not good for him. Although he does say this to the Standard Times, this is not the right place. Speaking about 49 Hawthorn Street, the right place for what has been called a sober house, but realistically is a house for sober people. I am adamant that I don't want you here. I don't want your services there. Council President Brian Gomes. Steve Sheldon, and you've heard these lines not just once or twice, a few times from the councilors.
I have.
How does that make you feel? Do you feel wanted?
No, and I understand the neighbor's trepidation. I don't as much understand the council's trepidation. I look around the neighborhood, and this residential use that I'm proposing, I think, is a lot closer to fitting into the historic nature of that neighborhood. As I walk down the street, I see dentist offices, doctor's offices, a nursing home, office space, a B&B next door. They're all a lot further away from the use I'm proposing, in my estimation, than a residential use like I'm proposing.
You also got a letter from the city telling you to cease and desist before you could even get started.
I did.
What did you think?
I still have. I'm trying to get some detail, and this is on me, not the city. But I'm asking for detail because it was very vague. It said they did an investigation, and they determined that what I was doing did not fit in.
Says, according here, it appears that you are changing the use of the building.
But they don't tell me what they tell me they think I'm doing. So I'd like to know specifically: what is it that I am proposing that the city has determined doesn't fit into the zoning?
Have you been able to reach the inspector's office?
The inspector actually did call me back. He was very responsive, and it's up to me to write a letter, which I have not done yet.
And what are you supposed to say in this letter?
I'm going to ask for some detail. I'm going to ask him what his investigation determined. I am proposing. I'm proposing a residential use, and I don't know if that's his determination. Did he determine, how many people are going into the house? I don't know.
You probably don't have this answer. I'm going to ask. How does he determine you're not inside? You've never sent anything to them before.
He never spoke to me prior to issuing the cease and desist, so I don't know how he would determine.
Don't you find that very interesting? Welcome to New Bedford. By the way, 508-996-0500. Let us take a couple of calls if you don't mind. Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. I have a couple of questions from Mr. Sheldon. First of all, when you said it makes a little bit more money than the average rent, do you get assistance from the federal government, from the welfare office? You get a check that gets mailed to you? Is that how that works?
No, it doesn't. These are all market rent. Each person pays their own rent. I get no subsidies. I pay my tax, and I get no grants or any other money from federal or state.
Okay. Other question. This is such a great program. Why don't you put it in your neighborhood, a block away from your house, or 2 blocks away from your house, if you're and you get to supervise it closely, instead of putting it in all kinds? Because I've noticed the areas that you put in, like Worcester, like Lowell, and now New Bedford, we have such an epidemic of this problem. But where you live, you don't have that epidemic. Why not give a helping hand to put in your neighborhood?
Yeah, I'd respond to that. There is a sober house in Newton. There's two sides. So one is there's more of a need in Lowell, in New Bedford, than there is in Newton. So it needs just physically more beds. And the other reason is economics. We can provide a great house. This is a 5,000 square foot house. People are going to pay less than they would for renting an apartment. On average, $500 a month each to have 1,000 square feet of living space. The economics are that in today's climate, the real estate prices and the interest rates allow us to give great living space in these towns.
Are you providing food? Do you provide utilities or anything along those lines?
No. So they rent the house and they provide their own meals and everything else. It is a rental.
Caller, thank you for calling. Let us continue. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Turn your radio off.
How you doing, guys? My question is, if this wasn't a sober house, if this was just a rooming house, would you have any issues?
I'm not sure that that's up to me to decide something about what the city is zoning. Your question is?
My question is, why even bother going public with that? You want to make it a sober house. Why not just make it a rooming house, and then when you get people to move in, just, make sure they're sober? Why, by going, I don't know what the city councilors are thinking. It's a great thing that you're doing. Maybe they'd be happier if you wasn't a sober house, it was just a rooming house, and guess what? I don't care what people do. And how do you like that? I don't think they like that too much. I don't understand the conflict with this. Grandstanding, perhaps, I guess.
I think that it's something to consider, that in fact the restriction makes it the tenant's typically a better tenant.
You can't just have a rooming house, whether it's sober or not, just a rooming house. I know that house. I used to go there. Beautiful house.
It is a beautiful house.
Sad that both the Greens, both doctors are gone now.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. It's been 20 years since I've been in there, so yeah, they were nice people. I think it's a good
Thank
thing.
you for your call. I do appreciate it. Going to move on. Prior to you purchasing 49 Hawthorn, what was going on? Is it empty right now? Is it vacant? What?
Right now it's vacant. Prior, it was used both as a single-family house, 8 bedrooms, or 7. There's 8 bedrooms. 7 of the bedrooms were being used by the prior occupants. There were 2 doctors from Brookline who owned it, and they also had 2 separate offices in the house: a doctor's office and I think a psychiatrist's office.
Wow. So basically, you're turning it into full residential as opposed to office residential.
I am.
Wow. And there's no law against what you're doing, to the best of my knowledge.
I don't believe so.
Let us continue. 508-996-0500. Hello.
How you doing?
Hello.
Yes, I'm here.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'd like to ask Mr. Sheldon, since this was a residential piece of property, am I correct?
Yes, you are.
And it paid taxes, property taxes, is the conversion going to be paying taxes, or is it going to come under the guise of a nonprofit?
There's no conversion, and I absolutely will pay the full amount of the tax.
So this piece of property will pay property tax and contribute to the betterment of the city then?
Absolutely.
Okay, that was my question. Thank you for your answer, and thank you.
Thank you very much. Let us continue. Hello.
Hello. To me, this is absolutely absurd what they're doing to this gentleman. I mean, if you think about what they allow these absentee landlords, what they're doing in the city, buying up these properties and just putting whoever they want in there, and all the issues we've been having. And here we are, a gentleman that has a plan in place that will actually have people that want to be sober, want to contribute to the city in a positive way, and the city council is putting a roadblock in front of him. It makes absolutely no sense to me. I'm scratching my head over here, guys.
Let me ask you something. Do you think that the council is being hypocritical?
Yes, very hypocritical, because on one hand, they grandstand that they want to help people and, the opioid crisis and all the crises we've been having. But on the other hand, not in our backyard, because obviously that's a high voting area that's very politically involved, and that's why they're grandstanding on this. Let's face it. That's my opinion.
Fair enough.
Because in other areas that we call so-called high crime areas or whatever, there's nobody. These councils aren't standing up when they're building these sober houses or whatnot in our neighborhood. So it is hypocritical.
Thank you. I appreciate the call. There goes that term again. I think it's going to be one of those terms you're not going to lose, sober house. It is a house for sober people. What would be the opposite?
The opposite will be a market rate rental, and it is a little ironic that we would say that we don't want this type of house, this residential rental that requires people not to drink, but in fact, it's okay to rent to people who do drink. I won't say do drugs, but is that what we're saying?
Well, maybe down the road after the vote in 2016, if marijuana is legalized, then you could be saying drugs. 508-996-0500. That should be let me ask you this question. Similar to what I asked the caller about the council being hypocritical, what about the neighbors in the area? Are they being hypocritical? Because they're also speaking out against you.
Yeah, I don't think the neighbors are being hypocritical. I think the term sober housing, it can be broad, it can be confusing, and it can be scary. And I don't think they understand the residential nature of it.
Well, I'm going back over the newspaper from last October. I believe it was the 23rd, 28th, something like that. Councilor David Alves said he'd like to have a chance to talk to people, and you said the same thing. They had this meeting. How much did they let you talk at this meeting last Tuesday?
They let me speak some. So they brought me up to the lectern and asked me to describe what I was doing. And then about 10 minutes afterwards, the counselors were given 2 rounds each to ask me questions. I felt in most cases I wasn't given an adequate chance to answer. There was a lot of grandstanding going on.
By whom?
By the counselor. I don't know the counselors' names. Some counselors were very even-keeled and I thought were on point and asked things about zoning and my intentions, and others weren't.
Fair enough. Let us continue. Hello.
Hey, good morning, Brian.
Good morning. You're on with
Hi,
Steve Sheldon.
How you doing, Mr. Sheldon?
Hi.
I agree with the previous caller. The city councilors are grandstanding on this just because of the neighborhood that's in. For some reason, they think that neighborhood has got priorities and it's better than any other neighborhood in the city. If this was going on any other location in the city, they wouldn't be saying boo about it. So my advice to you is, you're doing a good deed. Fight as much as you can, and if you have to bring the city to court, bring them to court. Have a good day. Good luck.
Thank you for your call.
Thank you. Yeah, my intention and my hope is not to do that. I've reached out both to the neighbors after the meeting and the councilman and asked to meet privately with them, maybe in a smaller group. There was over 50 people and me. There are 50 people opposed because all the councilors, minus one. There was one councilor who was not apparently opposed to this.
Oh, really? Which one?
I'm sorry, I don't know his name.
Well, you better find out.
I better find out. But I will know his name. So I've asked to meet both with the neighbors, my immediate neighbors in a smaller group. I offered to host it. One of the neighbors then offered to host a meeting. And I'm hoping that will be organized and he'll call me in the next couple of days. I also asked the same of the counselors to meet with them.
So what can the counselors say to you? Scratch. Let's try this a different way. If everybody's opposed to what you want to do, what would be your next step?
I'm not clear on that yet. I don't know what my next step is going to be. I'm going to, again, hopefully meet with them, and I'm hoping that they will have a chance to both look into the law and look into perhaps the industry, and they'll feel more comfortable with it when they have some time to digest some more information around.
So they digest and they still don't like and regurgitate back to you. Do you move forward with your plan? Because at least according to the law and case study that you've presented, you are in the right.
I'm going to have to make that decision down the road. I haven't decided yet whether I'll move forward or I'll rent it as a market rental. But my plan is to keep the house in any case. So there is a chance that I will rent it to just the open market.
Has any counselor or any member of the city, of city government, have they offered you an alternative for you to do with the house?
No, and that's one of the issues I'd like to bring up when I hopefully meet with the counselors.
We have some calls.
Welcome back to Brian's Beat. We're talking about the house that Stephen Sheldon wants to rent to sober folks. It has also been called a sober house. We are going to take your calls. We are going to get more responses from Mr. Sheldon. We did receive a phone call from City Council President Brian Gomes. He's going to join us right now. Councilor, good morning. Welcome to Brian's Beat.
Good morning, Brian, and thank you for the opportunity. I just want to clarify a couple of things that I've overheard in the past 20 minutes or so. First of all, about the grandstanding. We're not grandstanding. We've done this over and over again. For those that call you up giving you misinformation about this is the first time that we're standing up against something like this. If it was in another neighborhood, we wouldn't stand up. Let me tell you how many neighborhoods we've stood up on. Charlotte Avenue, Pleasant Street, far south end, South Front Street, just to name a few of them. This is not a grandstand by anyone. I'm going to stand up for the city council as the president and city council. Mr. Sheldon also said to you that he felt that he didn't have an opportunity to speak to the city council. We brought him in. He had every opportunity to speak to us as long as he wanted, to explain whatever he wanted to do. He had the opportunity. So that is a mistruth that he's saying to you, being sitting there right now.
Okay, Counselor, first of all, I will agree with you. Certainly, I have seen, at least through the newspapers, the actions that the council has taken in regards to some of these other homes that you're talking about. In this particular case, though, there aren't any services being offered. Let me stop. Okay, you know that part. You heard it from Stephen Sheldon. So what is your reasoning? There doesn't seem to be any rules, regulations.
I'm protecting the history of the city, the integrity of the neighborhood, an economic engine. This is where the history all started. I'm not going to keep repeating myself. It seems like nobody gets what we're really saying. It's not that we're against what Mr. Sheldon's doing or what he tries to bring to the city. He's been at it for 6 months, by the way. He told us that the other night. We're not going to be the test tube for anybody in the city of New Bedford, and I won't allow that. Second of all, I was saying that we want to provide them services. This is just not the right fit. If it's not the right fit, you don't put it there.
Would you prefer market rent where people aren't necessarily sober living there?
Let's not change the subject.
That is the subject. He wants to bring in sober people. He wants a house with sober people. He wants a house with sober people.
No guarantee.
There's no guarantee in life.
That's true.
But is there any zoning that he is breaking here?
He's going to run into, and I know he's sat there telling you about taking us to court. He's got to get through the zoning, and I don't know what he'll be taking us to court on, but that's quite. We've been here and done that before, so we'll do whatever anybody's coaching him to do or whatever.
Fair enough.
Sheldon, I want Mr. Sheldon also to know that he lost his opportunity after what he did today to speak with me in privacy. I was giving him that opportunity to sit down and listen to him, but what he did today, he doesn't get that anymore. We'll continue to do what we have to do to protect my city and the citizens of the city. This is not, again, against the sober house or providing any services. This is about a not good fit, and when it doesn't fit, you don't wear it.
Fair enough. Thank you, Counselor. I appreciate you calling in. Thank you. Well, Stephen Sheldon, you got to hear from the council president. I wish I could have found out exactly what zoning that you may be violating, and I think you would like to know that too. Your comments on what you just heard.
I did get a chance to speak, but I didn't get a chance to speak at a number of opportunities. One is they basically held a secret meeting a week before this, or 2 weeks before this, with people in the neighborhood. I was not invited to that by the city council. That's where this started. So if property owners have an even starting place, that wasn't it. They also let every neighbor stand up and say many things that weren't factual. I did not have a chance to respond to them. I also felt that I was overrode by a number of councilors without a chance to respond. But I was given a chance to respond, and I think I stated that clearly previously. As far as him not speaking to me, it seems an odd position to take for a city councilor.
City council president.
Particularly.
508-996-0500. Thank you for your patience. Hello.
Grandstanding.
By whom? All right. Next. Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Mr. Sheldon, I think he's doing a good thing. And I'd just like to say to the to the clueless city council that this is the United States of America and not communist China.
Ooh.
Have a good day.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the call. Hello.
Hi. I hope everyone's paying attention, or at least to what Mr. Gomes just said, that basically he's taking any talks off the table, he's taking his ball and going home, and that New Bedford, yet again, will be going to court and we'll be paying more and more fees and taxes. So thank you, Mr. Gomes, for being so... Just Mr. Gomes.
Would you like to say anything to our guest, Mr. Sheldon? No, I guess not. Wow. What do you think of these calls before I take this next caller?
They seem to support the House in general, and I think it's a worthy thing to support.
Hello.
Hi, good morning. How you doing?
Excellent. You?
All right. Mr. Sheldon, the question seems to be one of process, whether one is for or against it. I'm generally familiar with the neighborhood, but if there is a zoning issue or a zoning change needed or required for you to do what you're going to do, notwithstanding the benefits or the negatives that may involve, the city has the right to go through that process, to address things like, is there enough parking spaces, if the zoning requirement changed from a mixed-use residential to a total residential and what that means. I think the city has a position there. If you're unaware of the zoning piece, then certainly process-wise, as an American, you can go before the zoning board if that's required and make the case there. What I seem to see is that there was a public hearing regarding this prior to the necessity of changing zoning laws for what you propose to do, and that's normal course. And certainly, as an American, if there is a zoning requirement, you go before the zoning board and appeal your case. That's the way I'm looking at it.
I agree. Absolutely.
Okay, so would you know offhand what the zoning of that building was when you acquired it?
I do. It's residentially zoned.
It's residentially zoned. So then there is probably no need for a zoning change. If it's zoned residential, they may be able to put a cap on the number of folks you have in there, just like any other housing piece, and maybe that would require some type of variance. If there's enough parking, is there enough parking for the number of people you're going to put in there?
But parking doesn't, it's my belief that parking isn't an issue in terms of a residential zone. So.
But that depends, because there are provisions if you're servicing a certain number of people, a certain number of parking spaces is required.
It's true, and I don't know it specifically, but in terms of the number of people who I am proposing and the number of people who were in the house, the use apparently is less, not more. There was 7 bedrooms, a doctor's, and a psychiatrist's office.
Thanks for the call. Only because of time. Thanks for the call. I do appreciate it. I am going to squeeze in a couple others before the commercial, so let's go here. Hey, hello.
Hi, good morning. How are you?
Excellent. You're on with Steve Sheldon.
I was at that meeting, and I was standing next to Mr. Gomes when your guest said to him, let's get together and meet. And Mr. Gomes says, yes, I can meet you on this day or that day. So, let's put that to bed, because I was standing with Mr. Gomes at that point when he approached him and said, let's meet. And Mr. Gomes says, I can meet on this, this, and this. Second thing, what I don't understand is that, you mean in the West End, I can set up a boarding house without any reservations?
No, not a boarding house. It isn't a boarding house.
Okay, explain to me, if you have 8 people or more living that are not related in one facility, you tell me that's not a rooming house, a boarding house?
It's not a boarding house. No, it's a residential rental. It's a single family house, and
it's a single family house with a number of people who are related living in a house.
So it's controlled by a number of different things. But if you wanted to look up the SJC ruling on City of Worcester versus College Hill, the difference between a lodging house or a boarding house is the control of the house.
I'm just a president of Bedford. I'm not an attorney.
No, but that's why I'll
pretty
happy to
what
give you.
You're doing, and I don't think it's right. You're going to have 8 people there and say they have 8 cars. I don't know where you're going to put them, but I'll let you have someone else talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I would like to just say,
you know what? Go ahead and say your piece. I'm going to go into a break. I'm also going to ask if you will stay over after the news.
Sure, happy to. Just very quickly, the number of people are no more in that house than was there prior to me coming in, nor any more than my neighbors. So the use is not greater.
508-996-0500. Callers, I see you there. I'm going to take a break. If I can get to you before the news, I will do so. Dan is
Hour 2 of Brian's Beats. And yes, I do get to play Brian the Cabdriver again in a few hours, about 5 hours from now. Last night, boy, I've got a story about last night that will fit into where we are today with our program. Steve Sheldon is still here. He's decided that he can stay a few more minutes to take your calls in regards to 49 Hawthorn Street at the corner of Irving and Hawthorn. He wants to make it a residence for sober people. He would like to have 8 people in that house, which, if I understand correctly, is less than the number of people that were in there prior to you taking it over, correct?
They had 7 bedrooms, a doctor's office, and a psychiatrist's office, so I believe the use is less.
All right, so, and you still have 7 bedrooms, or are you gonna make it
They
one of
actually
those offices?
they have 8 bedrooms. They only had 7 set up, so no, I would use the 8 existing bedrooms.
So it would be difficult for somebody to argue that even with the number of people that you want to put in there, that you can't house 8 different people, non-related folk.
I believe so.
All female or all male.
That's correct.
Ready for some more phone calls?
Yes, I am.
508-996-0500. Hello.
Hi, my name is Christina. I'm with South Coast Fair Housing, and I just wanted to call and say that, you know, all that I know about this situation is from what I've read in the newspaper and from what I've heard on your show, but it sort of sounds to me like the negativity around this project is sort of based on a bias that against individuals recovering from addiction, and that the city is potentially thinking about taking action based on that bias. And you know, from our perspective, our mission is to eliminate housing discrimination, and it sounds to me like the city potentially taking action based on a bias against individuals with disabilities could potentially violate the federal and state fair housing laws. And the city, as a recipient of federal funds from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, not only has an obligation not to discriminate, but also to affirmatively further fair housing. So I think this is a really good opportunity for the city to sort of help with educating the public and the neighborhood to sort of, you know, help change some perspective on this property. And, you know, as someone who does education about fair housing all the time, I'd be happy to talk with anyone and sort of talk about, you know, how this project relates to the fair housing laws. And, you know, if we can help move the discussion forward, we'd be happy to do that.
Well, thank you very much for calling in. I'm going to ask you to do me a favor.
Sure.
In about, let's say, a little bit after 12 o'clock, about 1 hour from now, I want you to call over to the newsroom, 508-997-7936, and leave your information with Dan or Jim.
Sure.
All right? Do you have that number?
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much for your call. I appreciate it. We continue on Brian's Beat. Hello.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
You know, first of all, I have to say, I don't get the newspaper, so I have like a couple of questions for the gentleman that's there. What happened to the doctors? Where are they? I'm hoping they're retired somewhere.
They have retired.
Oh, that's wonderful. That is a beautiful big house. It's perfect for that. And you know what? That's what I believe. I know them very well. That's what they wanted for that house. So I
only had a chance to meet them once at the closing, and they seemed like a very nice couple.
Oh, they are. I worked for them for years. They were really great. I often wondered what happened. And
hold on a second, please, if you don't mind me asking. You know, or you believe that's what they would want for the house? You mean to a home for sober people?
Yes.
Really? And you've had conversations with them?
Not about that, but you have to know their personalities. And knowing them I've known them for over 10 years, I believe in my heart they're both very good people, and I believe that that's what they wanted done with that house. I could be wrong, because, you know, I judge people by, you know, talking to them for years, you know.
Thank you.
Okay, so anyways, I'm glad I found out, and have a great day, guys.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your call. Well, Steve, I'm looking at this as objectively as I possibly can. It seems that the callers overwhelmingly seem to favor you. I think there may have been 3, maybe 4 of the calls that you fielded today that weren't necessarily in favor of what you're doing. I don't know that the callers make the difference here. I am going to ask you again, after listening to what people have stated and the lady who was talking about housing and possible housing discrimination, if and when you have this meeting with counselors and residents, things don't seem to go well as far as you're concerned, what is your next step? What will you do?
Again, I haven't decided yet. I believe it's the right use for the house. I believe it's a legal use. I believe it's a desirable use. I believe that the city could get their arms around this, and it's a really important piece of the continuum of care for people in long-term recovery. And I would like to see the house go forward.
Obviously, Brian Gomes, City Council President, at least right now, is a detractor. How could you go about changing his mind and maybe the minds of some of the other councilors?
I'd like to sit down and see if they're open to understanding the laws that surround it. I'd like to see if there are some things that they would like me to do in particular with the house. I'm happy to address any issues that the neighbors or they may have that, regardless of the law, if it can fit into this, into what I would like to do with the house.
Are you considering selling the house again? I know it's an investment property for you.
I will not sell the house.
You will not sell it?
I will not. So there is a possibility that I would rent it on the open market while I explore what happens and possibly long term, but that's not my desire.
What could you get for renting that house if you could rent it? What would be the rental price?
I don't know. I need to look more into that. Single-family houses are a little bit tricky, unlike a two-bedroom or three-bedroom where it's really easy to stick a number on it.
But this is 8 bedrooms.
It's 8 bedrooms. It's a 5,000-square-foot house with a carriage house. It's tough to figure out a number exactly. I don't know off the top of my head.
But your plan is to rent it to 8 different individuals at $500 each?
That is the average, yes.
So that would be $4,000 a month.
$4,000 a month. That's right.
And they're going to take care of the utilities.
And they take care of the utilities.
And their cable, and you're going to take care of the water and sewer.
Yeah, actually, the $5,000 is actually reduced by 20%. So we take money out for utilities. So that the numbers I gave you for the $500 was for a house where we pay the utilities. So if they're paying their own utilities, it'd be reduced by 20%. But yes, it's $3,200 would be the rental price, is what I'm thinking.
Wow, that's a pretty high price tag for the city of New Bedford, no matter what neighborhood we're talking about.
Yeah, it may not be realistic. It may be. It's a huge house in a great neighborhood.
Have you started measuring for tenants yet? Vetting them? No. So none of that has happened yet. Is there work that you need to do to the property before you can have them move in?
The property is generally in good shape. There's a lot of deferred maintenance. I think anyone who drives by the house can tell it hasn't been painted in what looks like about 20 years.
Bushes need to be trimmed too.
Bushes need to be trimmed. So my plan is to completely bring the house up to date. It's generally in great shape. But what we started to do before the cease and desist is paint the interior and get everything back up to standard.
So in other words, even with that cease and desist, you couldn't do the regular maintenance? You can't trim the bushes, can't do anything?
I am taking a cautious approach where I wanted to be able to reach out to people, so I didn't want to step on any toes, so I chose not to. But certainly I can maintain the house.
Last question. Don't know your background prior to real estate. Do you have an attorney down here?
No, I do not.
Get out the yellow pages. Go to WBSM.com. Flip through the website or whatever you need to do. It sounds like you've got a challenge on your hands right now.
It is.
And when would you like to meet next with the residents of the area and any counselors that may want to come on board?
I was hoping to meet early next week. I am available anytime. I'll stay clear except for today and tomorrow. I can meet over the weekend. I can meet nights or days. I am available at anyone else's schedule.
Sounds good. I'm going to take one more call, and then I'm going to let you go and get on with our program here. Hello. Let's try it like this.
Hello.
Hello, you're on with Mr. Sheldon.
Hi, how are you, gentlemen?
Good,
Mr.
thank you.
Sheldon, I have a question.
Sure.
What is there anybody there that's going to live there or visit there on a daily basis that's going to monitor these people?
No, it would be they're responsible for their own, for themselves, for their own recovery, for living. So no, it isn't. It truly is a rental. I do provide support in the sense that I'm available, and in terms of maintenance for the property, I still will be responsible for the maintenance of the property as I am with all my other properties. We have a full-time maintenance staff, and that's a 24-hour-a-day thing.
Do you have any other properties such as this?
I do.
And how long have they been running?
I have 2 properties that have been running for about 6 months each.
Okay. But there's nobody there to monitor these recovering people.
Yeah, and this is where the crux of the situation stands. There's not. They're responsible for themselves. It truly is a rental. Their difference is that they're in long-term recovery, but they're responsible for themselves. It's not a rehab. There are no services. So they do take care of themselves. And these guys, I say guys because both my other houses are men only, and they work full-time. They take care of anything that they need to do in their daily life, including going to AA and NA meetings on their own. It's considered peer supported because everyone in the house helps everyone else through their recovery, but there are no. I don't provide any other services. No.
Okay, caller.
Alrighty. The other 2 properties you have, they're similar in their setups?
They're similar. Their houses are not as big, but they're similar.
What did you mean by similar?
Well, is it the same setup where the people are responsible for themselves?
They are.
Excuse me?
They are.
Have you had any situations in those 2 properties?
Situation? Do you mean people falling off the wagon, house catching on fire? What do you mean?
Wagon disturbances.
Absolutely.
Late night, something where the police were called by the neighbors or whatever.
No, there has been no police calls at either house for the entirety of the time that they've been running. There's been no disturbances at either house for the entire time that they've been running.
I think that's very important.
I think you're right, and thank you very much for your calls. Your call. For that matter, calls, plural. I'm going to let Mr. Sheldon go. We can continue this after the break. I really appreciate you coming into the studio today. And I hope after your next meeting you will come back and talk to us, whether you can come in studio or do it by the telephone, because you don't live in this neighborhood. Not yet.
Not yet. Thank you very much for having me.
No problem at all. You take great care. Stephen Sheldon, he owns the property. What did you say, SJS?
SG is in George.
SGS. Holdings, okay. And it is a for-profit company. He says he will pay taxes, and I'm going to pay a bill.